Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at our first tutorial using TransactionKit. This will be a really good place to start if you haven't used TransactionKit before and you really want to get stuck into Web3 development using account abstraction. This will serve as a good introductory video, as it's going to be really simple today. We're just going to show you how to get set up, installed with the correct packages, and then we're just going to send some of the native token, which will be some Mumbai Matic, as we'll be working on Mumbai. So to start off, you just will need to install these two packages, Etherspot TransactionKit and Ethers version 5.4.0. We need to use this version here just because it's currently compatible with TransactionKit. If you want to go to these docs, there'll be a link in the description, but it's etherspot.fyi, and they will have everything you need. We'll have the installation code here, and the code to actually get up and running with this demo. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to do it in Code Sandbox, just to keep it simple, and so that we can share this with you after, so you can copy the code, do whatever you want with it. So I'm just going to create a React Code Sandbox here, and then I'm going to add my dependencies, which are the two which was listed on that page I just showed. The first one being Etherspot TransactionKit. Now make sure you update to the latest version, because we don't have the latest version cached on Code Sandbox. And then I'm also going to add the Ethers library. And then, like I said, I'm going to make sure it's set to 5.4.0, just because that's compatible with TransactionKit currently. So I'm going to move this out of the side. So really simply, we're just going to be editing two files here, just app.js and index.js. In this tutorial, we're not going to need to create any more new components or anything, because it is relatively simple. So I'm going to start by importing Etherspot TransactionKit. I'm going to import it from Etherspot TransactionKit. The other thing we're going to need here is we're going to need to import ethers from Ethers. Okay, and that's all we need to do with the imports on the index.js page. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be lifting code out of this page here. This is a documentation page I've created, pretty much showing exactly what we're going to do in this tutorial. But I'm going to copy the code in. I'm going to explain how it works, just so you know if you want to change it or you need to understand it correctly, you can do so. So first thing we're going to do here is, we're going to use the Ethers library to create a random wallet. So this is just for the purposes of a tutorial. Every time you reload the page, we're going to generate a new key-based wallet. So we're just going to use that for the purposes of the tutorial. Down the line, we'll show you how to log in yourself using social logins, have a consistent Etherspot smart wallet that the user can use every time. But for now, we're just sticking to the absolute basics. So what you want to do here is you want to wrap your app here in the render function in this Etherspot TransactionKit tag, which is what I'm going to do here. And we're going to pass in a couple of values. The first value passing in will be our provider. So what this provider is essentially, to generate an Etherspot smart wallet, we need to give the Etherspot SDK something to generate that wallet based off of. So here you see it's just the ethers.wallet private key, because we can generate wallets based off a private key. But in the future, like I said, we'll look at using like the Twitter authentication or Gmail authentication or your own key-based wallet, something like this. But for now, just the provider wallet. The other thing we want to pass in is the chain ID. So we want to tell the Etherspot SDK if we want to generate it wallets on a testnet or a mainnet chain. So I'm just going to put 80001 in. This is the Mumbai testnet ID. So because that's what we're going to be working on today. So the Etherspot SDK knows, okay, generate wallets for this guy on the testnets, and we'll generate it on all the testnets we support. So that's all we need to do for index.js. We've wrapped app in our Etherspot TransactionKit tags. So now this app is now pretty much supercharged and ready to go with working with TransactionKit. Onto the app, I'm going to start by adding some imports here. and I'm just going to copy them across here from this page, and then I'll explain what these are in a second. So we've got a couple of tags here. We've got Etherspot batches, Etherspot batch, and Etherspot transaction. Now these are all used in tandem together. So Etherspot transaction is for each individual transaction. So if I want to send tokens to 3 different people, I could add 3 different transaction tags. Then what I'll do is I will put those in a batch, which means they're all batched up and will be sent together. And then the batches on top of that is to send all those, like it pretty much sends the batches per batch. So yeah, use Etherspot transactions. We're going to get some hooks out of that. The hooks being the estimate and the send hook, which I'll get to. These are pretty much just so we can estimate how much gas all the transactions within these batches are going to cost. And then the send function just does what it says in the tin. It sends it to the Etherspot SDK for processing. Use wallet address. This is just a helper function we're going to use here. This is essentially just going to show us that the Etherspot wallet address that is generated. And yes, I've forgotten one import here, as we're going to be using React, so we want to import that as well. So that's all we're done. That's all is done for the imports. Let's add some use states here. So essentially, if you know much about React, well, if you don't know much about React, these are just some variables that we have, so we can set the address and update it, as we enter something new to our to what we want. I'm actually going to change this to just this address here, which I want to send funds to. And so the default values are we're going to send to this address, and we're going to send this amount of Matic. Okay, going back to the code which I'll be lifting from, and this will all be linked in the description, guys, so you can mess around with it, you can do yourself. Okay, so we've included the hooks here. This is the estimate and the send. This is what I talked about earlier. So we're going to use this as the buttons to click. So when we want to estimate how much gas it's going to cost the user, and then send when we actually want to send the transaction. And then the last thing we'll add is this const Etherspot addresses equals use wallet address. So we need to specify here that we are using Etherspot Prime, because we have 2 versions of the SDK now. This new Prime version is the one using the 4337 functionality. The old one does not use that. So if you want to use that, you need to make sure to list that here. Yeah, and then that's all we need there. So I'm going to go ahead and change these tags to say Etherspot sends native token demo, just so it makes sense. And we'll say let's send some Matic. Okay, and just so we know the address that we actually have generated here, the Etherspot smart wallet address, I'm just going to add a little p tag here, and then I'm going to put in our Etherspot addresses, which we've got using this use wallet address. So this address here, right? This is the Etherspot smart wallet address that we have created. So it's not deployed yet. It'll get deployed on the first transaction that we send, but based off of the provider wallet, the random wallet that we've created here, we can deterministically know what address that the Etherspot smart wallet is going to be created at. So on our first transaction, we'll deploy our smart contract account to this address. So the only thing left to do is actually add the tags here, the Etherspot batches tag, the batch tag, and the transaction tag. Add a transaction within that, and then add some buttons which will actually send the transaction. So once again, I'm just going to lift some code from here, and then I'll talk through it. Let's move this out of the way a little bit. Okay, so what we're doing here, what I described earlier is about the Etherspot batches, the batch, and the transaction. You can see this transaction here. It's just a very simple, the most basic transaction you can send on Ethereum. It's just a send transaction, and all we're describing in it, all we're including in it is who the address, we're sending it to, and the amounts to include along with the transaction. Nothing else is happening here. For Etherspot Prime, one of the things to be aware of is that you need to include this via tag. If you want to use version 1, you can just remove this and send it via Etherspot, but we want to be using Prime here. So yeah, what we do here, we have the transaction tag, which will be created within a batch, and then we can send it via batches. We have these two buttons here, which are going to call estimate and send, these hooks that we defined earlier. So actually, one thing we need to do first though, we have this address created, but we don't actually have any Matic on it yet. So we're just going to go to our faucet here, paste in the address, get 0.2 Matic, and we can check them by scan, but I think it's actually down right now. Yep, it's down right now, so we're just going to have to trust that this transaction will go through, which I'm pretty sure it will. So yeah, we've got two input boxes here, one for the amount and one for the address. This address that I set the default address earlier is going to be this 725 address, and here's the amount here. So hopefully this transaction has gone through now, so that we have 0.2 Mumbai Matic on this address. So we should be able to estimate and send to this 7.2 or the 725 address. So I'm going to click estimate, then I'm going to click send, and then we will wait a minute here, and we will hopefully see this increase or increment to 0.523. And yep, there we go. It's increased to 0.523, which means the transaction has gone through. Yeah, as you can see, super simple. 10 minutes, copied some code. I'm set up. I've got my dApp built. I'm working with the blockchain. I have these buttons here where it doesn't even feel like I'm working with Web3, because we're so used to this, this MetaMask sending transactions option. Being able to do this through buttons in a lovely UI like this, it simplifies the process. It makes the user experience so much nicer. So yeah, we're like just at the beginning of what we can do with TransactionKit, but this is just to show you how easy it is to get set up, how easy it is to do that send transaction. So yeah, we'll be posting videos weekly on this. If you have any requests for any use cases or anything, please let me know. And yeah, this code sandbox will be linked in the description along with these docs, so you can get started, you can get set up. So yeah, that's everything for today, guys. So thanks for watching.